At first, welcome to this podcast, and we means I and all the students of Anna University and all the audience of this podcast. Welcome you to this podcast, and now we are going for our further questions. And sir, our first question actually, which is natural. Actually, I don't want to be formal because in
Yeah,
formality we lose some uh, knowledge, important
that's
knowledge, and
true.
I
Yeah.
want that. So let let us be formal and let me be honest. So I want to ask the many questions related to this neuroscience and the technical domains which are multidisciplinary with other sciences like electronic sciences, communication systems, in which
Correct.
I am the student of, uh, and biomedical and especially brain computer interface, which is a hot topic in this subject, and some other things like startups and the education systems, comparison of Indian and US educational
Definitely.
systems related to this subject, and the startup culture, how the startup culture is booming in India and related to this subject, and other things. So I will start one by one.
Yep.
So my first question, sir, my first question will be that we know who you are, but most of the audience don't know you.
Yeah.
So I want you to introduce yourself so that they can relate them with you.
So,
Uh,
yeah, sure.
yes,
First of all, thank you, Ashish, and thank you, ECEA, for having me. I'm really happy to share some of my experiences. I hope it'll be helpful for all the juniors or people who are watching this podcast. So to begin with, my name is Sundararaman Rengarajan. Currently, I am a fourth year PhD student at Northeastern University in Boston, USA. And my area of research is neuroscience. Specifically, I'm trying to understand the mechanisms of autism, and there are different theories, about why autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder. I hope most of you are aware and familiar with the concept of autism because it's been increasing in India as well. So my take is to use engineering tools, something like virtual reality, eye tracking, whole body motion tracking, and have an experimental paradigm to actually understand the mechanisms of the brain that's going wrong in autism so that we can have better interventions or treatments that's more targeted. So that's my area of interest. And for context, I'm also an alumni. I did my undergrad in CEG, biomedical engineering, and I passed out in 2015.
okay, thank you, sir. And the I have seen your LinkedIn accounts, and we have done a lot of projects related to oscillogram and electrooscillogram and eye tracking related projects. So our next question will be to please introduce the projects what you have done since your UG here in
Yeah,
biomedical and
yeah,
other gradually
so yeah,
your graduate projects like that.
perfect. I think the first real project that I did was when I was transitioning between my third year and fourth year of undergraduation. So we had to do something called a hospital training, and that's for credit. So I had no contacts back then as to choosing which hospital that I need to go for. So I gave the decision to the department. It was Mutan sir who was the head of the department back then. So I was like, I have no contacts here. Could you suggest me some hospitals? And then I think there was a hospital called KJ Hospital. I think it still exists in Egmore, near the Egmore railway station. So that's where I was assigned to, me and one of my friends. We both were assigned to do our hospital training in KJ Hospital. And apparently it's a low profile hospital in the sense it didn't have so many busy patients or it didn't have multiple doctors. So the advantage of that for us was the chairman of the hospital, who's a respected urologist in the city. His name is K. Jagadisan. So he was able to sit with us and do a lesson every morning and evening. So I was there with the hospital for almost 3 months, which my anticipated time was just a month or so. But I ended up spending almost 3 months with that hospital, and every day, morning and evening, Dr. Jagdishan used to teach us something about like medicine and how biomedical engineers can use their engineering knowledge to help doctors. So we went through almost all sections of the hospital. So he used to like teach us how to read X-rays, how to read scans, how do you read like a blood report or a urine report, why do we take these, and we also like went into how X-rays are made, how people take it, and what's like the engineering principle behind like like exposing a light and how the image is formed and all those. So we went through like a step by process, and he was like, that was more like a practical education to me, because by then I was only reading all these concepts in textbooks and like writing exams. But that 3 months of training was more like eye-opening to me. Is like, oh wow, there are so many things that are interesting, so you can make education more interesting and all those. So while my time over there, he said, because you're here for a long time, like why not do a project? So that's where I started my first project, where using infrared technology, I was trying to non-invasively measure WBCs and RBCs, which is white blood cells and red blood cells. So we developed a circuit. Again, like it was not a completely new project. There were infrared sensors that was already like published in the literature and all those. So we were trying to modify an existing circuit for the frequency range of WBCs and RBCs. And I think we had like a small trial where we did blood tests with patients to get their actual WBC and RBC count, and we used our machine and we kind of like calculated the margin of error to see like how well this thing was working. So that was actually one of the first projects that like I was involved completely. I think we submitted it to the Texas Instrument Analog Design Contest. I don't know if that contest still exists, but we submitted to that. But I don't know if our project was selected back then. But that was my project. But that project was eventually published in a journal, and also like we had a chance to like talk about it in an international conference when I was in my fourth year. Although I personally couldn't go and present, Dr. Jagdishan actually went and presented our project, and he got some recognition for that. I think even Muthan sir and everyone who was there back then in the department knows about this. That was my first project, so to speak. And then the second one was my final year project, where we were doing a spirometer based project, where we wrote a MATLAB code to actually like understand the different spirometer readings and sort of like infer what sort of respiratory disorders you might have, because each respiratory disorder will have a different spirometer curves. If like most of you are familiar with spirometer, you might have used it in some experiment or the other. Spirometer is just a device where you actually blow in and try to get a respiratory curve to actually understand how your breathing pattern is. So based on that curve, we can actually categorize, okay, if the curve is small, then you might have COPD, or if the curve is more, you might have just a common cold, that's blocking your trachea and stuff like that. So we try to write like a MATLAB code to automatically detect, so that if you feed in the spirometer values, you can actually tell what sort of like, I mean, it's a very like premature project, but that's what we were aiming for. I think these days you can use machine learning to do all those, but back then we were hard coding it in like MATLAB. And we intentionally called in friends who had common cold, who had some sort of like asthma or something, and then asked them to breathe in to see if we could find a pattern or not. So yeah, that was my second project in college, and that was my final project as well. But that went well. After that, I was debating if I need to like take up a job or like pursue further studies. Again, my mentor and guide used to be Muthan sir. So any confusion, I used to like go to him, talk to him, and like take his advice. So he said like pursue further studies like anywhere abroad, because that'll be a good opportunity for you to learn so many stuff. So after I graduated from CEG, I moved to Japan. I was there for like 2 years. I was doing immunology research. It's completely out of what I was doing in engineering, actually, because this was more of basic life science. And the project that I did was I was trying to understand B cell signaling pathways. So B cell is one of the immune cells in your body, and I was trying to use technologies like like flow cytometer and then microscopy and then like SDS phage and all those stuff to understand what's going on into like a cell of your body, especially that immune cell which is called a B cell. I wanted to understand what's happening because B cell is very crucial for cancer immunology and cancer signaling in your body. So that was sort of my first master's degree, and it was in immunology, and my thesis was more about understanding B cell ligation pathway. That was a very interesting experience because it was completely out of my zone of engineering. And even though I used some of the engineering concepts, but it was more of like basic life sciences. I didn't really do any engineering part, but that was a good eye opener for me into like the research world. I learned how to do research. I learned how to like plan experiments, what are the data, how many replicates you need to get, what is like a publishable level research quality, how do you do statistics, because everything is crucial when you want to get your work published. So that was like an eye opener. And during that time is when I was very fascinated by the brain, and I wanted to like pursue my further research in something related to brain pathways. So that's when I moved to the US. So I started my initial PhD program in Johns Hopkins, and I was working under Dr. Stuart Mostovsky, where I was trying to understand autism, but through technologies like motion capture and brain imaging. So I did extensive functional MRI, which is functional magnetic resonance imaging, and then I was doing motion capture, which is what all these new movies use, Avatar and Bahubali and all those. So I was using all those sorts of like, technologies and some psychological measures to understand how can we improve the current state of autistic people. At that time, like when I came to the US, my first project was more about, okay, now that we know that this kid or this person has autism, how can they do some sort of like treatments to improve what they're trying to do? So how can we improve their attention? How can we improve their mathematical ability? If they're having struggle like to pay attention, to do a particular cognitive task, what are the things that we can do? So my next project was more about designing an imitation-based sort of a game. It's not like a real game, but it felt like a game because it was very interactive. So where you need to like perform dance moves like what you see on the screen, and we were recording responses. So we had a paradigm where we alternated the speeds in a way that you can actually like capture, and we were training kids to see if they can actually imitate better. Because as a child, the first way of learning before even understanding or comprehending language is more about imitation. So if you see babies or young children tend to imitate what adults are doing, the body gestures and everything. So imitation is actually like the first cue for us to learn anything in life. So we thought, let's play around with that. And if we can slow down and speed up and see if we can actually improve imitation in these kids, then they'll be able to do other tasks because everything is based on imitation in terms of like gestures. So that's what we did, and we got published. So that was a very clean study, and we did see like improvements in kids who came into this treatment paradigm and then like went out. Their parents reported that they had like good experience. My kid is more focused. It's not like they saw like a tremendous overnight change. I'm not talking about those sort of change, but before the treatment and after the treatment, they were able to see that self-interest, and they were like able to see people going for it rather than avoiding it. So that was very interesting to us. But also, like as a scientist, you do see stats, you do see numbers and all those. So I understood that yes, that treatment protocol was effective, but the problem was it was not very effective than what we anticipated. And when I was like reading more papers and books about it, I think the one thing that struck me out was, okay, now we know what autism is. It's a very like broad spectrum of disorders. You can put 25 symptoms to autism and it's still autism. And some of them can be like, super high functioning in the sense like they might look completely normal, but also they might have autism. And they might be the other kid who's on the other spectrum who cannot even talk. He's struggling to even like utter a word. He's very like less social. So this spectrum was a problem in the sense like autism can be classified as any of these things from being non-speakable to being completely normal. The only thing that we can do to like help these people who are on this spectrum is understand the disorder itself. Like you have to understand the mechanisms of why you see this big difference in variation. So that's when I switched gears. I started working with another advisor. Her name is Leanne Jablowski. She's my current advisor with PhD. So I started to ask the questions as to what is going wrong in the brain for us to see these symptoms. And then like slowly we started with some eye tracking paradigms. The reason we started with eye tracking paradigm is for all of these symptoms that's happening in autism, if you see one of the key core aspect would be like attention. So attention is important for you to like do any task. I have to pay attention to your question for me to like understand and comprehend. And you have to pay attention to whatever I'm trying to say here to, like understand what I'm trying to say here. So attention was the key concept. And if you see attention, it's not like a liquid or a solid where you can actually measure, because no one knows what attention is. It is a phenomenon that you think is giving time, or again I have to use the word attention, to a particular object so that you take the information from whatever you're seeing. So attention was very difficult to measure, and that's when I switched to eye tracking, because your eye movements are a measure of attention. Because staring at something and attending to something are two different things. Like I can be looking at you, but I can be completely zoned out. If I do that, my physiological response will be telling me. So if I attend to you, my pupils will actually like dilate or they'll constrict. So even though I'm looking at you, if I take the eye movement and if I take the pupil size, if it's not changing, which means I'm just looking at you and not really attending to you. So the eye movements were a good proxy for me to measure attention. And even like neurobiologically, the networks for attention and networks for eye movements almost overlap with each other, that there is like 80% similarity in the networks. So we thought measuring eye movements and having like experimental paradigms to understand eye movements could give us clarity on attention. So that's where my first 2 years of research, where we published like 2-3 papers on eye tracking and attention. So we did find that like autistic people make multiple, like almost like twofold times the eye movements that normal people make, and they make slow eye movements and they make inaccurate eye movements, was the findings that we had like from the published paper and all those. So this was very crucial to me. Now that we know that eye movements are going wrong in autistic people, I wanted to understand why it is going on, and that's my current research here. So like autism has a lot of things to say. For example, some people say it's genetic, some people say it's epigenetic, which is like from environmental factors and stuff like that. But no one knows what's going on. And there's a cellular theory that there's a pH imbalance in an organelle called endosome that might cause these autistic symptoms to manifest. And I think there was a rumor that said that if you take vaccine, that would lead to like autism, but that's actually a myth. I'm going on record and saying here, that's completely a myth. Yeah, that's a misconception. That's a myth. People have proved vaccine doesn't do this. And there are other studies that say, there's eating broccoli might alleviate some of the symptoms of autism. That's a proven study by a lot of people, but different people have different approaches to this. And the one approach that really I liked was there's a theory that says autism might be because of prediction impairment. So if you look into our world, whatever we're doing every day, we are predicting so many things. So for example, if you wave at me, you're waving hi at me, I'm predicting that you're saying hi and you're expecting me to like say hi. So when you finish your wave, you expect me to wave back and say hi, irrespective of you knowing me or not knowing me, or something like that. And for example, if you see a ball coming towards you, your natural response to be like to catch it or not. You won't be standing still if you're getting that information. And if you want to throw a ball, you know where to throw. You're predicting how force, like you know where to throw the ball. And once you decide that, you will position yourself as to like which angle you want to like throw the ball and the force. That is predicting the distance.
An inbuilt sense for a projectile motion like that.
Exactly. So anything like talking to me, responding to me, gesture and everything, you'll predict a lot of things. Based on my facial expression also, you might kind of like predict my mood, if I'm sad, if I'm happy, am I like interested, I'm not interested. Every second, our brain predicts a lot of things. And what our body does is sort of like execute the prediction. So,
Sir, here I have one question. Like
sure.
that, you said that our eyes are focused on one object, but we are thinking of anything else. Like so, how to measure the attention like that? So I think that attention can be considered as the focusing of signals in one object in which we are watching, or how to measure it without measuring the signals. Sir, I'm thinking of signals. In terms of signals, I'm thinking the attention as focusing of signals in one direction or on one object or subject. Like for a common example, actually, what is in my mind, I will tell you. Like when we are in classroom, so teachers are teaching the subject, and we are watching them teaching. But many of them are not present in the class, like they are thinking of
Correct.
something else, and presence of mind is not there. So, like, I am relating that attention to this.
Exactly. It's the same thing. So you're staring at the blackboard, you're staring at the projector, whatever the class is going on. But if it's not interesting enough, or if it's boring, or we are tired, like we don't want to put all the blame on the teachers,
Yes,
but we are tired and exhausted for the day that you cannot like focus. It's the exact same thing. So what if that
teachers,
happens?
sir, teachers will scold. So we see on the board, but we are thinking of something else like that.
Exactly. So what happens there is like because you're not paying attention, even though you're looking at the board or projector, that information is not getting into you. So imagine if something crucial is happening, someone is waving help or something, and you're looking at that person and you're not taking that information in. When that information, that sensitive information doesn't even get into you, there's no way you can process it and respond to it. Whatever that is. So this is class as an example. For example, in everyday life, I'm just telling you, like you're waving at me, you're showing some signs, you're just saying hi, like when you say hi, I'm taking that auditory information through my ears, goes into my brain. If I know the language, I understand it, and I try to manipulate and say, okay, Ashish told hi to me. I have to respond with a hi or how you doing or follow up question or something like that. That's how every system works. Imagine if that doesn't happen. You're saying hi to me, and I'm just standing still there, and people say I might be weird, I might be socially awkward. And that's exactly what happens in autistic people because people call them weird. I don't want to use the word weird; they're different. But the reason they are being branded as weird and socially awkward is because of that. Because again, it's like a spectrum. So some of them are actually like taking in information, but they don't have the machinery to process in the brain that
Process.
information. So they can take that high signal, audio signal or visual signal or whatever that signal is, it reaches their brain, but they might have problem in the cerebellum to like process their signals and then like reply you back. Or the other end of the spectrum is they're not even taking that information. The reason they're not taking that information in because of attentive problems. Because if I'm not paying attention to you, whatever you say just goes to ear and just comes out, like that's it. I'm not extracting the features and like exact information from that to like get you. So that's what got me interesting. So I was like, okay, if this is happening, I like the theory that this could be a prediction impairment disorder. So, like I said, everything is like based on predictions in our brain. We have something called an internal model, and that reflects a lot of stuff. So, I just wanted like go deep into it. And right now, my experiment is all about okay, is prediction impairment theory a valid theory or not? I'm trying to like get data, like practical data on this theory to either like support or like like refute this theory. Whatever it can be either way. I'm not on one side of the theory, but the whole idea of this theory is very fascinating to me because you're getting a framework to understand this very complicated disorder. And if something comes out of my research, I think that'll be like really useful to understand what's going on in your brain.
And so, and sir, I want to ask you one question about the connection of neuroscience with the in relation to in relation to multidisciplinary subjects like computer science,
Oh
electronic
yeah,
sciences, and that.
obvious.
Sir, the topic actually the hot topic is which I am interested in is brain computer interfacing. So, sir, I want to ask you to explain the topic like what is this brain computer interfacing and how, as an electronic engineers, what can we do in this and what computer science and how biomedical students know this, but how
Yeah.
we as electronics engineers, communication engineers, how can we approach in this subject and use it as a research tool for our further research.
Okay. So neuroscience is interdisciplinary. So even though I'm a biomedical engineer, like right now I'm using a lot of like sensors, and sensors comes under like electronics and communication. For example, one practical example that when I was in CEG that I was fascinated was wireless ECG or EEG. Like I don't know, most of you would be familiar with electrocardiogram, which is like getting your heart signals, heart rate,
Yes.
and yeah, PQRST. You would have read definitely. Like that'll be like a definite question in most of the exams. So ECG and EEG is a very complicated thing. EEG is electroencephalogram, which is putting so many
Actually,
electrodes on your.
ECG, ECG, sir,
Sorry,
actually
go ahead.
ECG and ECG signals we have seen in movies also. So a lot of times some patient is dying and they
Oh
are
yeah,
showing their
exactly.
ECG symptoms like this. So we
On
have
the
an
monitor.
experience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So EEG is more about like putting at least like 14, 16 electrodes on your head. It could be like a wet electrode or a dry electrode in your head, and getting like different signals, electrical activity from your brain, and trying to like characterize that. You'll get those alpha waves, beta waves, gamma waves, delta. There are so many waves that emerge out of. I mean, we call it those things because we classify each frequency signal as different waves, and we associate alpha to like one particular activity of the brain, beta to one, delta to one, like those kind of stuff. So you see, like the whole setup of that is very complicated. The ECG electrodes have like like 7 chest electrodes, and then you have like 3 comparison electrodes that goes with hands and like everything. The way we could make like how electronics engineer could come up with this, you could have wireless communication, wireless sensors, because this is a mess. If I want to like monitor myself for let's say like 4 hours or something, I cannot go out with like hundreds of wires on me, like because I have to do my daily activities. People look for convenience now. So it's always like better to go for sensors that are wireless these days. And that's where the crucial part of electronics and communication comes in, where you have to design sensors that picks up signals with less noise and high efficiency. Because all these are again like non-invasive signals. None of these penetrate through the body, right? So you have to find proper interfaces that goes with body. For that, most of you should understand how like human anatomy and physiology works, and then like design sensors to pick up signals. So electrical activity is best close to the chest or something, then you need to find ways, how can I extract that electrical signal from this based on the current wire things. And once that sensor extracts signals, then you need to think about ways of exporting it wirelessly. That's where the communication aspect comes. So this wireless could be like, I can just wear the sensor and the communication could be like to the computer right in front of me, or it could be to a doctor who's like in a different place. Like for example, I want to send my live data to my doctor, who's let's say in like Delhi or something. He's the specialist, and he wants to see the live data, not the recorded data. I mean, I can record data and send him like a few hours later, but if he wants to see me live, I could actually export that through a mechanism, and make him see the live data so that he can give more advice on it. So these are ways. I'm just telling ECG and EEG because they're the most common things right now. But these are the ways you could actually like think of electronics engineer really helping us. So sensors are very crucial in any biomedical field or any neuroscience field. Because all we do is like we want to understand brain or parts of body that's related to the brain. And obviously, we cannot cut open the head to see what's going on inside. We can only do those kind of things with animals, like mouse or rabbits. With humans, the only way we can do that is sensors, because I want to see how the brain is working. So either I image and see what's going on into my brain, but imaging also just gives me one slice of information. It doesn't give me what's going on live. Because when I put you under the scanner or like an X-ray machine or a CT scan, I just get for the 10 seconds, I know what your activity in the brain is. But I cannot do that like 24 hours. Let's say I want to monitor my heart rate. I want to like monitor any of the measures, my breathing rate, my eye movements or something. I cannot do that in a scanner. So I need something that's remote, that's wireless and more efficient, that I can do it as a part of like everyday activity. So one example I would give is like the Fitbit and the Apple Watch. Those are like done by electronics engineers, because they're using something called PPG. PPG is a sensor to measure like heart rate, respiratory rate, and now I think it measures SpO2 as well. So which is like very nice. So those are the ways you could think. Because before, the only way you could get respiratory rate is by putting all those 7 electrodes in your chest and then trying to get that. And from that, you should calculate something called heart rate. And from that, you'll calculate something called heart rate variability. All these are very crucial. That's what your Apple Watch and Fitbit tries to say. And even the number of steps you do, like it has accelerometer and gyroscope to detect the ground and everything, so that you don't need to measure steps by yourself. It just measures it yourself. And why do we need to measure? That's a big question. So it's for health benefits. So it's motivating you to like walk 10,000 steps a day or 5,000 steps a day, whatever your goal is. So it's for the well-being of the people. And we cannot ask people to like, oh, every time you step, have a counter in your hand and click it. Like we cannot do that because we have other things to do. We cannot put our attention as like, oh, did I like walk 5 steps or 6 steps? Oh, I'll walk again. Like that's not going to happen in reality. So we we need to have something that's automatic so that people can just wear it and then like go for it. So wearable sensors is like a hot topic, and I think definitely not only in brain, I think for anything, for cardiology, for pulmonology, for urology, anything like wearable sensors is the next generation hot topic. And that involves communication as well, because once you get the data, you're supposed to like transmit it to something else for people to like read and analyze stuff. So that's there.
And actually, we have studied the topics like smart antenna, wearable antennas, like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So electronics and communication comes over there. Computer science people, everything is based on computer science these days, because we have to have algorithms, we have to have machine learning models to pick up the patterns and sort of like predict a lot of things. So this machine learning and AI has become integral part of most research. Like even if it's health research, we need people. And also we need a lot of like computer experts to analyze the data. So from one participant or one patient or one subject, we get so much of data that we have to like do like a pre-processing step, remove the noise, get the actual data, and then like make visualizations out of the data. And for data visualization, it's one of the most crucial topics and important topics that most scientists and most even industry experts like really need. So you can look at like profiles like data engineer in companies like Google, Meta. They're paid so lot because visualizing that data is very important. Because if you understand what the data is, and I should present it, if I just give you one spreadsheet full of numbers, you're not going to understand what that means. So I have to present it and package it to you in a sense like anyone without any expertise can understand. Oh, like for heart rate, if I just give you heart rate for like, let's say, for one, for 1 minute, my heart rate is like 72, just 72 beats per minute. If we just give you 70, 72, 72 as like one column of spreadsheet, that's not going to help you in any way. As opposed to if I just show a graph of every minute, let's say for 2 hours, oh, okay, my heart rate has increased and went down and gone. So if I visualize that in a way, yeah, exactly. So if you do that, that's more informative. That's also like at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to reach. We want people to understand what's going on with yourself or with your brain through these modes of people who are expertise in different areas.
And actually, sir, it looks more artistic, so people can relate it with some visual presentation of it.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's how I think you can club in most of the electronics, electrical, and computer science into biomedical, because I feel like biomedical is more about like knowing bits and pieces of all these and putting together. That's like the amalgamation.
Yeah. Multidisciplinary subjects.
Yeah.
And sir, actually, since we are talking about BCA, our next question will be from the this topic. Like the BCA startups, since we have actually heard about the Elon Musk's Neuralink project. So I want to ask you about how ethical is it is, and what do you think about it? Like I have seen what we are doing.
But I hope most of you are familiar with what Neuralink does. Like Neuralink is like a chip. Neuralink produces. I think it is still a existing company. I think they haven't closed it yet. So Neuralink actually produces a brain chip that they want it to be implanted in humans, so that they can they can actually like transmit all the brain signals from brain to like a third party computer that's either outside. That could be a smartphone, that could be a laptop or something, and then kind of like send signal back. See, Elon Musk, the way he was branding Neuralink is I could make paralyzed people walk, I could make blind people see back. Like that's how I'm not exaggerating, I'm just quoting Elon Musk in most of the articles. I think he just recently spoke also about it. So the way he's envisioning brain chip is, the reason paralyzed people cannot walk is because the neuron that sends signals from the brain is not able to like send that signal to the muscles to activate the muscles to like start working. So that neuronal connection is actually like got cut, I would say, or disconnected. Might be due to accident, might be by birth, might be due to anything like surgeries, plans, and stuff like that. So what he's trying to do is extract that signal from the brain and directly send it to the muscle, so that the muscle actually like activates. So that you don't need a functioning brain to actually like activate your muscles. So that is his way of doing. And then the same thing with the asking blind people to make them see. The blind people cannot see is because might be the optic nerve issue or might be the rods and cones issue. So it's again like the way brain processes images. Whatever you see through your eyes gets into your retina, goes to the brain, processes and comes back to you. That's what you think is, oh, I'm seeing this beautiful mountain, or I'm seeing this tree, I'm seeing this animal. That's how you actually see things. So you get that visual information in, goes to the brain to process it. Elon Musk, if there's a problem in sending signals to the brain, he wants to capture that and then send it directly to the brain to capture this. So it looks cool, it looks very helpful, but there are a lot of downfalls. So the FDA has not approved this neural link on humans because it is very, I would say it's not very body friendly, because when moment you want to implant a chip, you get control of a lot of things in the brain. It can go positive or negative, even though it has a lot of advantages of doing these things. But no one has studied the long-term effect of having a chip in your brain, because a chip is going to be, even if it's a silicone or even if it's made with titanium, which is very biocompatible, no one knows what it's going to do in your brain if it stays for 2 years or longer. And even Elon Musk,
how our body will react to the foreign elements like that.
Exactly. So the idea of the chip is nice, but I would really not support the idea of implanting it in the brain because I don't see any specific benefits. So if we want to get into the brain and get some signals, why not we try something that's not invasive? Have a cap, have a sensor that attached to your head or a forehead or something like that. Extract signals. I know it's hard to extract signals from the brain because of the skull and the blood-brain barrier, so it is tricky. But I think it could be minimally invasive or something like that, rather than just cut open and putting that Neuralink chip into that. So I would,
Related to this, actually, I want to ask that, in their website, they have mentioned that they are developing robots for specialized operations, for doing operation without interrupting the blood vessels. So how they are going to do this? Actually, I don't know
Can
how
you come
they are
again
going
with
to
your
do this.
question?
So actually, according to their website, they are saying that they are developing the robots for doing some specialized operations for implanting the chip with fibers inside the brain without interrupting the blood veins.
So when they say that, it means the important brain vessels. It's not all the brain vessels, because you have to cut open a few blood vessels. I mean, obviously, even if I do a scratch in my face, that's cutting a few blood vessels. That's why you're bleeding here.
Yes.
So I think what they mean by that is they don't want to touch the important blood vessels. For example, the blood vessel that goes out of heart is aorta, and then vena cava. You might have studied superior vena cava, inferior vena cava. So when they say they don't want to disturb the blood vessels, is all these main blood vessels that supplies the main blood to the different organs. That's what they mean. But it's not they're not going to magically put a chip inside. Yeah.
And sir, actually, this next question is the comparison of the education systems in India. You have studied from India, Anna University, and you have studied in Japan also, in US also. You are doing good research in US. So I want to ask the genuine doubt that what experiences actually you have here and you have there, actually your experiences in these places as compared as the comparison of education systems in India regarding this subject, as well as in Japan, as well as in US.
I think that's a good question. So in India, what I saw is, now that it's been 8 years after I graduated, I've seen different systems. I would say in India, it's more of theory based. Now the system is changing, but it's predominantly, for example, we have things like signals and systems, where that's a huge concept, and we try to condense, go superficially into all of them in the undergraduate level itself, and packed with so many concepts, trying to understand different filters, Butterworth filters, there'll be Chevy shape, there'll be so many things that's packed into that signal. Fourier transform, there'll be fast Fourier transform, everything will be in one semester. which might be overwhelming for certain people, which might not be. The advantage is you get a head start or like a superficial knowledge of what's there in that subject. At the same time, when people feel overwhelmed, they kind of like lose track of what we're trying to learn here. I also like most of those signals and systems labs or something that's happening, in the college is more of a very preliminary level of like circuits. So they'll be asked like, oh, design this, or design this MOSFET, or design this, CMOS, something like that. So the whole point would be like to have like a small circuit and see if that transistor is working or not, or that resistor is working or not, or like there's no like an actual application. It's more like we're trying to implement what we learned in theory to show that, oh yeah, I give an input. So if I calculate using the mathematical formulas, the output should be this much of voltage, and you try to like implement that. But what most people fail to see, especially as undergraduates, is okay, I'm doing the CMOS, but what's the actual application of it? Like, where is CMOS actually used? CMOS is used in a wide variety. MOSFET is used in a wide variety of applications that we use, right from smartphones to your smart glasses to headphones to so many things. And the only thing is like the only thing that we are missing is mapping whatever we are learning so extensively in theory to actually what's happening in our everyday world. Because we are learning science to actually like make our lives easier. That's the whole point of engineering or science or anything.
We are focusing more on theory and less on practical applications like that.
No, I wouldn't say that. We are focusing on practical applications, but the practical application is more of not relating to what we use in everyday life. We make those breadboard based circuits. Yes, that is valuable. That is valuable information. But the problem is, at least me, in my personal experience, I failed to extrapolate that breadboard circuit into my TV remote. Like if I had thought that, oh, this is the exact same thing in my TV remote where I have like extra buttons to press and it's going to like send signals to my TV to like change channels or increase volume, like something like that. That connection between what we do in that lab to the appliances that we use every day is missing. Is what I feel could be improved in the Indian education system. I think in Japan it's much more different, where they only focus on experiments, like practical education. They really don't emphasize on long answers or like competitive exams. Like the whole spirit of Japan is more about understanding and doing sincerely what you're trying to do as a work. So they focus more on like, I'm happy if you do an experiment properly. I'm happy if you do a project properly and write a report for it, rather than understanding like 10 chapters in a textbook and writing an exam for it. It's like read one chapter, do a project in that, and if you do it properly, I'll give you grade. So that's how the system over there is. Even if you know that one chapter, do it properly. Like know it properly. You don't need to know 9 chapters there. So there are no competitive. If you look into like the Japanese education system, there are no competitive exams. People focus on whatever is like comes to them naturally, whatever they are interested in, and then they try to be an expert in that. Even if it's like a small thing, they want to be an expert in that. And in US, it's the opposite. So what happens is they do give you like nice theoretical knowledge, like they refer like big scientist textbooks and all those. But the final exam in most of the courses, if you look, it'll be a project. It'll be a group project or an individual project depending on the subject, but they'll actually ask you to come up with an idea of how to use this theoretical concept that you learned, do the whole project for the whole semester. So they'll start this project like right from week 1, and each semester has 14 weeks. You all know, like in the Indian system. So in that 14 weeks, they'll work on this project for 10 weeks, either as a group or independent. And towards the last week, they have to like write a report or present their project as to how they learned this theory from the classes, and then how they implemented in the project. And you should show the output of the project. I mean, it could be a great project. It could be you couldn't get the output or something, but at least you learned how to use it in real life. So these are the main factors that I feel in terms of like the educational differences and what they're looking for in students.
Okay, thank you, sir. And sir, actually, one doubt from the like Neuralink research, like sir, are there any laws and ethical like standards like there for implanting these chips in humans? I don't think there are any laws related to these things, like any clinical experiments or clinical trials on humans for that.
Yeah. So anything that you work on humans have to go through FDA. FDA is like the board in the US for you to like do anything. So even like something as simple as COVID vaccine should be approved by FDA to test on humans. And this, so FDA is sort of like the health law, I would say. So I think like Neuralink applied for their FDA approval like 2 or 3 times now, and they got rejected all the time, stating that they feel it's not like safe and all those. So the problem is they have to like test on animals that are similar to human beings, which is very difficult because the only best animal that we have that resembles humans are monkeys. But even they're not as sophisticated as humans. So even if I plant a chip in a monkey and try to do something, this I cannot justify that that's exactly is going to happen in humans also. So there's no way they can say that this is safe because before implementing on something, even if it's going to like lead to a loss of one single life, that's also a problem because like you don't know what this chip is going to happen. Like with any circuit, there might be problems. No one knows, like how the brain responds. So you put something inside your brain, and what's going to happen? Like it's very difficult to say what might happen. You can anticipate like 100 things, but there might be 1,000 more things that might complicate your scenario. So that's the reason, Link or any sort of like. There's another company I cannot recall the name right now, but they're also trying something like a brain chip, and they're also not getting approval.
Thank you, sir. And so actually, my next question will be how to like every subject is having its own unsolved problems and challenges. So, what are the unsolved problems and challenges in neuroscience and brain-computer interface as a subject? What are the
Sure.
challenges in this subject? Like in up?
I think that's um, that's a tough question to answer. In the sense, like I would say there are 1,000 questions that are unanswered because everything is new. Because every day you keep reinventing things. I wouldn't even say you are discovering something because we are past a point in science where we have discovered most of the stuff. It's more about rediscovering. Like people thought this was the pathway that was doing something. Let's say, like this was the thing that was happening in the brain. And then with new technologies, you kind of like reanalyze the old stuff and find, oh, this is going wrong. Maybe this is the new thing. And then like 10 years down the lane after me, like some other like young scientists who come into this field will use more advanced technologies. So, like, no, whatever like Sundar found might be a little different, as to like what is happening there. So I would say in terms of like challenges, all these are challenges. So what we need to focus right now is in whatever goal you're trying to like focus, like see if there's a challenge. For example, right now autism in at least in US, 1 in like 50 people have autism in young kids. So autism is a prevalent disorder, or be it cancer, be it Alzheimer's, be it Parkinson's. Like I'm related to healthcare, so I'm just taking all these. So in electronics, see what problem it is. Like is like wireless communication is a problem? Is the efficiency of the signal transmission is the problem?
Like
So
as
what? Yeah,
sorry to interrupt, sir, but as a
go ahead.
communication telecommunication student, I am like interested in telepathic telecommunications. So like how to relate this topic with the, I think this topic is related to the brain computer interfacing, and I see this future of this topic like telepathic telecommunications is going through the neuroscience and brain computer interfacing.
Telepathy, I would say it's kind of like a branch out of the neuroscience because see when you say telepathy, it's more about I think of something and you understand that and you respond to that thought, right? So you can sort of like use brain computer interface to do that. So the BCI in that point would more likely be a bridge between you and me. So in the sense like if I'm thinking of something, my brain is picking up signals, and I have to use a brain computer interface machine to decode what I'm thinking, just with the brain signals, and then like send it to you, and then like you should encrypt that and like understand. Oh, he's telling hi. So you have to like look into applications of why you need to do it. For example, let's say there's a paralyzed person, like paralyzed person. So he or she cannot move his or her hands or legs, but they have to like navigate, in a wheelchair or something. And it's always very difficult to have one person pushing the wheelchair wherever you go. It's very, very difficult, like so. What people thought was okay, like we can have something like a voice commanded stuff, like you can say, oh, move left, move straight, like a voice command wheelchair would be like an ideal situation. But again, like what if that person is also like mute, they cannot speak, they cannot like really talk or something. So there is a new prototype of wheelchairs where you can actually think left or right or think of an image so that the wheelchair actually picks up and do. So in that case, the brain-computer interface is actually useful for you to be more independent. But if I had to like talk to you in telepathy, like what is the application? Like what is it? Is it just for fun, or do we have any like real-time applications for it? Um,
One application I saw, actually, I know that lost astronaut problems. This problem I actually was searching on the Google, and I found if our astronauts, like who are in Mars, who have reached Mars, they have their electronic equipments, telecommunication equipments damaged. So how will we communicate with them? Like, and lost divers, like some divers are having their communication equipments, if they are damaged, so how can we contact with them? So
but
telepathy is the maybe the solution for that.
but if telepathy is again telepathy, we cannot do. We're not magicians to do just random telepathy, right? So I cannot just think and you cannot like decode. We don't have that sort of like extra sensory powers to do it. So if the communication between the satellite and Earth is damaged, but that would be the case with telepathy also, right? Because telepathy is also using a computer as an interface to transfer your signals to me. And if that whole communication is lost in terms of like, between the satellite and Earth, then that's going to be the same case for telepathy as well. So there needs to be something else that they can do in terms of like mode of communication. Wireless signals instead of infrared, you could try to like use different signals, different waves to actually communicate between the two of them. Even if it's delayed, if we have alternate mode of transmitting signals from two different areas where like space has its own like construction and Earth has its own like gravity and other signals and other interfaces. So when you think that way, if all the communication, the radar communication is lost, how can two person who's in space and who's in Earth can communicate is more about signal transmission, I would say. So you need to find new ways of like transmitting signals, or find a way to have a satellite that sends like different kind of signals to the Earth, so that like that particular person is in trouble or not, or whatever that is.
Like where we in telecommunication communicate with using electromagnetic waves. So I was thinking, just an idea, raw idea, that we can communicate using mind waves. Like there are mind waves of different frequencies. So can we use them, utilize them in communication?
But mind waves, that's again like a tricky thing. So the way like your body is sending out a lot of signals, like your brain is sending out a lot of like magnetic signals and electric signals, because we are on Earth and there's like a magnetic thing that's going on at the North Pole and South Pole. That's the reason we have so many like electric stuff and things going on. So electromagnetic waves have their own bandwidth. They have their own frequency and ranges to like vibrate. So if you think of just mind waves, I have no idea, like even beyond like a few hundred meters, I don't think it will go off like automatically. It is generating out of my brain, but it's just going into the air and it's just like getting scattered here and there. So there's no way that it'll be focused, and I don't have that power to like actually send that signal to reach to your brain so that it can pick up. You see what I mean? So that distance is the problem. So I don't think anyone is reading any of these things, because we need some sort of so even EEG, that's picking up electrical signals from your brain, is very like artifacted. There's so much of noise in it that it takes almost a day for you to like understand what your brain signal that you recorded is. So the way you're talking seems to be a good solution, but in reality and practicality, if you look at the advantages and disadvantages, it's very difficult, because you need some sort of sensor to amplify the signal. The signal, intensity is very small, that once it comes out, it just dissipates in the atmosphere. So there's no way that's going to like travel kilometers. Like even like 1 kilometer, it's going to be hard for the signal to be extracted by something else.
Means I think that there must be actually more research is required in this field.
Exactly.
Actually, we don't have enough data or enough research papers or enough research regarding this topic. So we can't say anything. Anything we say will be just an idea, and we don't have any proved data, proved concept, or proved uh, recorded data regarding that.
Mhm.
So
No, that's true because I think this is a very controversial topic because some people are favoring it, some people are against it. So there's not like much. There's no like a consensus in the research community to extensively research. There are a few folks if you browse. I think there'll definitely be at least like 10 scientists who's working on this, but that's really not enough. Like they need to have like the right setup and the right infrastructure to like delve and ask these questions.
sir, actually the source of this topic is, and my next question is, the meditation, yoga, and meditation sciences like that. Sir, in our Indian spiritual text, we have seen a lot of applications like this telecommunication, what I am talking about. Sir, it has its source in Indian spiritual text. I have learned a lot about the meditation, yoga, and the like third eye, and how we have extrasensory perceptions like that. In spiritual texts, we know that yogis and meditators have some extrasensory power, like they can see beyond the range, they can hear beyond their perception range, sensory perception range. So
Mhm.
the telecommunication was also one topic which I got an idea from the spirituality. And so coming to the next topic, meditation and meditation sciences. What are the researches going on like in meditation science? I think that there are going on meditation, especially science of meditation.
Yep.
So I want to
So
ask you about whether you have some
yeah.
experience in this field.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I'm not researching on meditation, but I think all the topics that you touched in terms of like uh, this rishis and like sages and monks able to like see things beyond a particular range or hear things beyond a range, all boils down to like one particular concept called consciousness. And before me delving into this or explaining what or sharing my thoughts, I would really ask you, like, what do you think consciousness is? Like, can you define what consciousness is?
Actually, I can't define it properly in words, but I think that it is a matter of experience. Like it is a concept to be experienced, like some inner darkness. When
Mhm.
we close our eyes, we see darkness inside, but we cannot prove it to anybody else that there is darkness inside. So
Okay.
when we close our eyes and try to see inside, so we see darkness. So and actually, when we close our ears, we and the sound of the, I think whether it is blood running inside or what other types of sound, but we cannot prove it to anybody else. So this is, I think, some uh, concept which is related to inner dimension, not
Yeah.
about the external physical dimension. Yeah.
So I would partly agree with what you said, but this is what my take on consciousness is. So if you go into like Oxford Dictionary or any dictionary or just Google out the word consciousness, it would say it's a state of being aware of things happening around you. Being aware of what's happening around you is consciousness. Is what is the textbook definition. Okay. So what I would say, because of the spiritual backgrounds and the Indian roots that we all like share and like have learned all these years, uh, I would define consciousness as being aware inside and outside of you.
Yes.
If you're in a state of mind where you're aware of things that's happening inside you as well as outside you, then I would say you're really conscious. And if you look carefully, the characteristics that you explained about rishis is just this: rishis and sages, they're meditating a lot to expand this power of consciousness. So for example, simple things, like you come into a house, any house, and then you remove your slippers, you put it there, and then this all we do it subconsciously. When you enter a house, like you put out the slippers in like one corner on the shoe rack, remove your socks, just go inside, wash. And there are certain things that you do like subconsciously because you're trained to do it. You'll just go, like, even though you're watching some videos on YouTube or something like that on your phone, you can still be able to like eat your food that's kept in front of you. So there are so many things that you're doing subconsciously. But if I interrupt you in the middle and I ask you how many spoons of food did you have, you wouldn't know. You know that you're eating food from the plate, like, or you're eating chapati or something. If I just interrupt you in the middle of whatever you're doing and ask you how many spoons did you take, then you don't know because you're not conscious on the outside there. Your focus is more on whatever you were watching on your phone. It's the same thing. So if I ask you which side of the house, which side of the shoe rack did you leave the shoe? Did you leave it together or not? You wouldn't know because you won't pay attention. You'll just remove it and you don't know which angle the shoes are going on. Because I mean, like obviously it's not very important, but you'll just leave it that side and then you'll get it aside. So the whole point of meditation is trying to increase ways for getting more sensory information, and that's what meditation actually helps you do. So the rishis and sages have done extensive meditation to increase that bandwidth of getting more sensory information. So they know what's going on inside them. So they know, okay, my heart is beating, I'm aware of it, my stomach is working, my liver is working. And then like in the outside also, they know, okay, this is happening. That guy is walking, this tree is shaking, this like leaf is, there are 1,000 things that's happening around you. You're breathing, for example, my phone is getting charged on my side right now. My screen is blinking here. There's my eye tracker that's going on in the right side. There are like at least 10, 12 things that I can point at you that's happening right now. But I cannot keep all of them in mind because I don't have that bandwidth. So that's what I feel is consciousness. Consciousness is taking in all the sensory information and trying to store them or respond to it. I don't need to respond to like my eye tracker's light that's blinking way out, you cannot see it, but it should be in my brain because I have to be conscious of, I have to be aware of what's happening in my immediate surroundings. So if I can do that, then okay, you'll call me a rishi, you'll call me a sage, because what I'm trying to say is I'll be looking at you, but I'll say, oh, the eye tracker is going to power down. The reason I know that is because I know for the last 2 hours it's been blinking and it's not on power. It's been going on in my mind because I've picked up that signal even though I'm looking at you. And I'm going to say in 2 hours it's going to like power down. Why do I know that? Because I've been constantly picking up that signal. If I say that, you'll think I'm a genius, but it's not. It's basically expanding my band. Yeah.
Circular. According to Indian theory, this will be, we can call this as you are on a higher plane of knowledge than others. There are gradual planes of knowledge and you are on a higher plane of knowledge. You know more than others regarding some concept or anything. You know more than others, so you can predict the future. You can say anything, they don't know about that.
I understand, but it's not about predicting the futures. It's more about extrapolating the line. So in graph, like you find a trend line, and then like for example, you know a value for 0 to 10, and you want to know what will be the value for 20. So all you do is like extend the line, whatever the trend line is, to 20 and see what the corresponding y value is. That's exactly what we're doing when you say predicting. It's not like a magic. It's not something. I think VCs and stages, they have a framework to do the so-called prediction. It's all about like getting information and trying to process the information and execute the command. That's it. So the whole concept of consciousness, because you were talking about like research studies, there's so much of controversies defining consciousness with regard to science field, because some of them say it's illusion. For example, there's a famous scientist called Daniel Dennett. He's in Tufts University in Boston. He would completely disagree with whatever I say now. Like he feels, and he's written books and everything, justifying that this whole consciousness is illusion. That why he's calling it illusion? Because he thinks we already have that information. How a computer works, how this thing works. So you have that information. All you're trying to do is like imagine a place that you're trying to say something, but you're not telling anything new. What he feels is you already have that knowledge. It's just that you're telling that knowledge out and feeling that you're predicting something in the future. So he calls it an illusion, and he has written a lot of books and papers about it. And if you ask someone from call like Robert Sapolsky, he's in Stanford right now, he would say that there's a fundamental neural network that controls consciousness. So he's on the other side of the spectrum. You ask me, I'll have a different answer to it. So even within the science community, there's no consensus on how to define consciousness and how to like actually measure or do something with consciousness. But there are multiple studies that's going on, like I said, to like understand. Some people relate consciousness with different activities of the brain, different regions of the brain getting activated. So if you're in this particular state, they say that you're conscious or you're attentive and stuff like that. But trying to get that common consciousness is, I think, consensus among the community is going to be very, very, very difficult, and it's a very controversial topic.
That's thing related to that. Sir, what about the child prodigies like that? They are having a more talent in something other than others as compared to others like that. So how do you explain consciousness in this domain? Like,
So the child prodigies is they are naturally good in certain things. So the in terms of like getting good in something. For example, you could be good in cricket. You could be good in whatever. For example, I don't know how to play cricket. I'm going on record and saying I'm not good in cricket. So if I want to become like Dhoni or something, it's all about like practice. The amount of time it takes to practice depends on my consciousness. So how consciously I'm looking into my mistake and I'm going. So what happens when I do that is my whole network, I'm retraining the whole network in my body. So there are certain regions in the brain and the body that's connected for me to do this particular stroke of the bat or a ball with something. So my form is completely bad. And I'm trying to like get inputs from my coaches, from people to get that training and get my swing properly, get my hit properly, and all those. So with child prodigies, they naturally have that inclination that the network is established. And if someone finds that, like for example, he's good in calculating because he or she has that network for algorithmic processing already set in the brain. That could be genetics or that could be like epigenetic factors. So when they do that, and when someone identifies that he or she has this natural talent of doing this, then they become the prodigy. Because there are so many prodigies who have not even been like recognized all over the world. You know a lot of people.
Sir, actually, the famous example I mentioned, the famous example from Tamil Nadu is Srinivasa Ramanujan, sir. Everybody, whole world knows him.
Exactly. But again, like
the
so for example, he was getting the formula, but he was not getting the proof. His story.
proof.
Like
Yes,
he didn't know how to justify that. So that was the training he took in Cambridge when he was working with his professor in Cambridge. That like how to write proofs and how to do. So no one knows how this whole thing happened. And that was more of like a spiritual way of explaining. He went it through the spiritual routes.
yes,
But I think neuroscientifically, it's very difficult to say why he was getting those things. Just used to get
because
the
sir, we
formula.
don't have, sir, we don't have that much higher level of research in neuroscience. But I think I relate this with this spirituality. Like he was a spiritual person, and
Yeah.
his bandwidth, like as you said, bandwidth is increasing when we do meditation and yoga. So I think
Yeah.
his bandwidth
Might
was
be.
somehow increased.
Exactly.
So, like that.
Exactly. Yeah. True. Because he was constantly playing. He was like on prayers most of his time. I've read his biography and stuff. So that might be the reason. Like he could be good in like focusing on numbers. He was good in
Actually,
finding
sir,
patterns.
sir, actually, mathematics is also my favorite subject. But when I see the lost notebooks of Ramanujan and the theorems in that, and my mind goes
Yeah.
beyond the space.
Exactly. I
Actually,
relate to you.
I don't even understand what is that.
So yeah.
Okay. Sir, due to time constraint, actually, we will not extend that much. So I have only one or two more questions, and I will actually we will do some other podcast on some other topics. So I have one or two more questions for that. And
Sure.
sir, actually, first is like BCI startup culture in India. How do you see that? Like in what type of problems in India we can be solved from the BCI?
I think
Like,
this
so
right
stand
now there are a lot of VC startups coming up. What I would say is like if you want to have a startup on your own, this is the good time because I feel the government as well as the private sectors are investing a lot in all sorts of like startups. So when I wanted to be an entrepreneur when I was in college, so I wanted like have a startup and everything. Still on my bucket list, but I don't know when I'll do that. So at that time, like there was no framework, there was no structure on. Okay, all I know is like I have this idea that I want to make it as a project, but I don't know how to start with it. How to, because not all research ideas can be commercial products. You will terribly flop if you don't have that conversion factor in you, because you would have discovered something great, groundbreaking in the world, but that doesn't mean that it's going to sell as a product so well. Like so, you need to find that USP, unique selling point between what you created in the lab or in your project and making that as an actual project. So when I started out back in like 8-9 years back, there's no like structure or framework. But today, I feel like like the Tamil Nadu government is having something called TM Startup Funds, and Anna University has our own incubator now, thanks to all our alumni, like senior alumni who started incubators. But I think IIT Madras Research Park, which is in Tharapati, right behind Ramanujan IT Center, they have fantastic incubators. So all you need to do is like, okay, you have this idea, you can apply for like TN startup funds through an university, or reach out to alumni who are in this space, and they'll help you guide, giving you all the resources here, and like get all sorts of help. They'll help you like set up the office and finding your resources, and even find funders. As long as you have a good idea and a good mentor, you need to do a lot of like homework, I would say, like understanding what this idea is. You need to do a lot of like market research. Why is it that you want this idea to be a product in market? It could be a software, it could be hardware, it could be anything, it could be an application, but you need to have a strong justification as to why this has to go map into that. If you have that, I think it's going to be like fantastic. Because one of our college seniors and alumni, Siddharth Nair, he had a company called Frista Innovations. It was in Chennai, and then he moved to Bangalore. Right now, he's completing his PhD in like IISc Bangalore. He has another company called Zuron AI. That's a BCI startup, and he's getting fantastic funding, and he's been like, I think his company has been receiving a few awards. I've been like, I used to be in touch. I interned in his company whenever he was in like Chennai and all those. But so those kind of things, it's a healthy competition that's coming up. But I think the core idea for you to like succeed, don't worry about resources these days, because I think like there are so much of resources for you to like start a company, or even if you don't know how to start a company, you can talk with a lot of like seniors and alumni that definitely guide you and give you the framework as what to do. But the most important stuff is your idea. Why do you think your idea is going to hit the market, and study the market so well that like your product it shouldn't be very unique because people will be afraid to buy. It should also not be the same that's already in the market. So you should, the best way that I would think of this is go with the crowd, in the sense like whatever the trend is, go with the trend. Find what mistakes the trends are doing. Like right now, if this is the trend, like there are so many trends that keep on happening every year. It keeps changing. Go with the trend. Try to understand the trend. Find out the mistakes the trend people are doing, and then like tap into it. That's when you can actually go, because people will know that okay, this is the trend, but this is a variation of the trend. So people will believe that this has something to do. If you go completely in the opposite direction, you can do that unless you have that conviction, and it is, if it's genuinely like a groundbreaking thing, then you can go in the completely opposite direction. But that's very unrealistic these days. So rather than going a completely new route, I would say look at the current route, what people are doing, find mistakes in that, try to fix that mistake. That will be like the easiest way for you to like tap into an entrepreneurship zone, and then like experience that.
Thank you, sir. And actually, I have a lot of questions.
Okay.
But I think due to time constraint, I should close this
No
now.
worries.
And we will extend our curiosity we will save our curiosity for the next podcast, so
Yeah,
that
for sure.
we can have
Yeah.
more informative sessions like this.
Sure.
And finally, sir, I thank you on behalf of the whole Anna University and our audience for giving us your valuable time. And we expect that in near future also, we will see some more informative podcasts related to this subject and its applications in different fields. And thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for giving us your time once
I
again.
think yeah, thank you for having me. It was great talking with you.
Yes.
Yeah, happy to be here.